Three, two. Welcome into another edition of Another Dolphins Podcast. Both the Miami Dolphins and New England Patriots are riding three-game losing streaks, but there's something that's got to give. Cat and Houtz join me today to preview this massive AFC East battle. Boys, how are you preparing for the toilet bowl?
Uh, the thing about rock bottom is a lot of times you think you hit rock bottom, and then it's worse from there. And then there's like 20 more layers of garbage below that. So I'm hoping that's not the case here this weekend because I tell you, I've just been reflecting back. I can't recall a worse 3 week stretch in my almost 30 years of being a Dolphins fan. It's not being dramatic. There were high expectations this year. They're the only team in the NFL that have not led a game yet, and people are calling for heads. Fans are calling for every head in the organization, and I sympathize with those Dolphins fans completely. So something's got to turn around. You have to think something's got to turn around at some point.
And when you're saying that, though, I mean, the New England Patriots and their fan base got to feel the same way, right? We're both going into this as losers, toilet bowl. But I think you touched on it there, Kat. The most disheartening thing through all of this is just how high expectations were and how, with just a matter of weeks, it all went to crap. So how am I getting prepared for this toilet bowl, Jake? No expectations.
Tums? Tums might be a good choice for everyone involved this weekend.
Pepto,
the Dolphins enter this game 32nd in points per game, somehow just scoring 11 on average. The Patriots are 31st with a whopping 13 points per game, led by Jake Brisket and that offense. Kat, let's start with the Miami Dolphins, though. And this offense, Tyler Huntley went 14 of 22 for 96 yards in his first outing as starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. I think it was 8 to 10 days since he arrived in Miami. Not a lot of time to prepare. Do you feel that entering week 2, we'll see a little bit more comfort from Snoop?
Well, the difference between week 1 and the first week he started and this week is he's going to be on the road now. So there's a whole extra layer added in there. This is a game that, and I've been saying this the last couple of weeks, that without Tua in there, you hope that you can get to the fourth quarter and be within one score. And they haven't been able to do that. They were getting close to it last week, in the Titans game when, 7 minutes left in the third quarter, and you see Braxton Berrios, which you think is going to be a punt return touchdown, and then gets tripped up. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to go ahead in this game. And then, he gets tripped up, 5-play, 5-yard drive, kicks a long field goal, and then the Titans run the ball down your throat the next drive to make it a 2-score game. So, I think I would hope it's a little bit easier on him, but for that to happen, the Dolphins can't come out guns a-blazing like they always like to do.
Yeah, Mayo and the Patriots defense, they got to be rearing their head back. But I think the biggest thing here is I want to see if we see a noticeable difference from last week, because there were opportunities when you go back and look at the film, whether it's, Tyreek Hill having single coverage, beating his guy and, just checking down or whatever it might be. There were opportunities there, but I want to see what they do and, kind of take that running element to the next level, right? Because that is what Snoop Huntley brings to this quote unquote offense, say maybe Tua doesn't and Skylar Thompson. So tough defense, tough matchup, but we should see a noticeable difference with this extra week of practice and with Mike McDaniel having an extra week to game plan.
A lot of guys around the league will tell you that there's nothing more dangerous, nothing harder to prepare for than a dual threat quarterback. Tyler Huntley, 8 carries for 40 yards last week. He had a long of 20. He had Miami's first and only touchdown, I think, in 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks at that point, going back to the Buffalo Bills game. I think this team is desperate for Raheem Mostert. This team desperately needs somebody who can run through the tackles because Jaylen Wright, 9 for 32. I thought he ran pretty well, but when you consider 8 for 12 outside of 1 carry for 20 yards, there's still a lot left to be desired. Tyreek Hill added 3 carries for 19 yards, doing some trickery. But guys, lightning does not work against brick walls. Devon Achane, 10 carries for 15 yards. I think that's one of the things through 4 weeks we got to start putting to rest is the Devon Achane just runs up the middle, because even if it's a defensive tackle getting one hand on him, he cannot break those tackles. And I'm not saying that it's a fault, but this is somebody who needs to get the ball on the outside. And I don't think the Miami Dolphins can just keep running him into a wall that he just isn't breaking through.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, getting them back and restoring a little bit of balance to the offense here. and get a couple of 2nd and 6s. I mean,
Huge.
give them a chance, because that's the big thing. Is not only is Achane averaging 3.1 yards a carry, Jaylen Wright averaging 3.3, but you have just so many of these plays where it's 2nd and 11, and then you get, like I had said last week, the Dolphins average a pre-snap penalty at least 1 a quarter, less than 1 a quarter. So now you've got these drives where you come out and you have a 1 yard loss, and then you have a procedure penalty, and it's 2nd and 16. It's like you're throwing the ball from there, and then defenses tee off. So it is the exact opposite of complementary football. So hopefully Mostert, Wilson coming back restores a little bit of that.
Yeah, and I kind of, wrinkle my nose when you first hear that, because you hope, you should be able to still, get, not at what you said, but just the fact that we think we need Raheem Mostert back to get this offense going, because like you mentioned, Wright looks solid at times, Achane as well, but Achane is missing, some of those holes. I wish I had it up. I'm trying to pull it up, but his EPA last year, he was, plus 293 yards after over expected or something. He is dead last, I think, this league. So this year in EPA. So he's not getting those same breaks that he had last year. And, he's not breaking off some of those big plays. And let's be honest, that's the biggest difference between this Dolphins offense. Everyone talks about the checkdowns, things like that. But when you're not hitting Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle for those big plays, you see it now. We're just another offense that seems to be figured out.
What's pretty... nothing's reassuring when you're 1-3 and arguably the worst team in football, but the Miami Dolphins desperately want to be the San Francisco 49ers. And ironically enough, the 49ers played the Patriots, and Jordan Mason last week had 123 yards, 5 yards per carry, and a touchdown. And this is a Patriots team, man, that are dealing with a boatload of injuries. Starting safety Kyle Duggar's not practicing. Other starting safety, Jabril Peppers, he's limited. Do you see a bit of a matchup advantage here where the Dolphins can maybe go on the road? I know in Gillette Stadium there's that obnoxious boat horn. Can they quiet that horn just by running the football against this defense, do you think?
Well, I guess one positive is that the Dolphins seem a little bit healthier than they have the entire year. And yeah, the Patriots not having Kyle Duggar, that's one of their best defensive players. There could be some shots down the field if those opportunities arise, but I want to see them come out and slow the game down. This has got to be a 13-10, 16-13 type of game, and that's the type of game New England likes to play too.
Yeah, I hope they take those deep shots, but let's be honest, Stu Puntley's going to be so protective with this football, and they're just going to take what they're given. And like Kat said, this is going to be one of those low-scoring games where maybe whoever has the ball last ends up winning this one.
Top receivers by week for the Miami Dolphins entering week 5. Tyreek Hill at 130 yards in week 1, highlighted by that 79-yard touchdown reception, I think it was, something along those lines. Devon Achane, 69 receiving yards week 2. Hill, 40 in week 3. Waddle in 36. Kat, where are you expecting that number to be in week 5? Obviously, the New England Patriots have a very good secondary, headlined by second-year cornerback Christian Gonzalez. But for the Dolphins, they might be able to manipulate the defense a little better if someone like Odell Beckham Jr. is playing on Sunday.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Beckham plays. As of right now, everything with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle this year, I'm just irate with. These are the two guys that you chose to build your team around. Let's be honest, with Tua at quarterback. And when things are down, the fact that they don't seem to make things better, at least not this year. You just look at last week. The Dolphins start out the first 2 plays. You have a 15-yard catch by Waddle. You got the 15-20-yard run by Tyreek Hill. You're starting to move the ball a little bit, and then a simple swing pass to the outside. Tyreek Hill just doesn't even give enough effort to bend down and pick the ball up, and it should have been a touchdown. And we've seen this so often. Jaylen Waddle had a big drop where if he catches that, he might take it to the house. So those big plays have bailed out the Dolphins in the past, and they're just not doing it this year. And it's got to change. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Tim Boyle needs to be starting a quarterback, not Snoop Huntley, because Boyle being a quarterback was the only time it looked like an NFL offense, not a good NFL offense, just an NFL offense. So, but I wish Huntley the best of luck, because I am glad that they picked him up, but hopefully he's a little bit further along this week.
Yeah, that's interesting you said about Tim Boyle because I remember there was a ball to the tight end or something. It looked like it was crazy accuracy, and I was like, oh shit, Tim Boyle's better than I thought. The thing with Odell Beckham Jr., do you guys really think he's going to be able to make it out there this week? I mean, I think they're just kind of going about that, trying to maybe have the Patriots game plan for that. I don't know how you felt, but I was taken back by his almost making it sound like we should be thankful that he's here in Miami, right? Did you hear that interview? He's basically made it sound like we should be thanking him for being able to for coming. Almost made it sound like he was doing us a favor by coming and playing here. So I want to see what Odell Beckham Jr. brings to this offense because everyone continues to say, we need more out of that wide receiver 3, right? I don't know that necessarily you should expect the wide receiver 3 to be on that same par as those other guys, but everyone thinks this offense is going to just immediately, fix all of its mistakes if we get that wide receiver 3. So let's see if Odell Beckham Jr. has anything left in the tank. And we have to mention he does have a little bit of familiarity with Snoop Huntley. So who knows what could happen.
Yeah, I think Huntley threw Odell Beckham Jr.'s first touchdown when they were both in Baltimore together. Tyreek Hill on the season, 17 receptions on 30 targets for 217 yards and a touchdown. Jaylen Waddle, 17 receptions on 20 targets. That kind of surprised me when I saw that, but only 212 yards. And Waddle signed a 3-year, $84 million contract extension this offseason. He can't be robbed anymore. I think that's probably one of the things I'm hoping. Like, obviously, we want the Dolphins to turn the season around, but we need to see Jaylen Waddle be a consistent start to end of the year, just a consistent 1B, if not chasing Tyreek's tail for that 1A position on the offense. It just seems like nothing, I think, let me down more last week than that crosser over the middle where Waddle just dropped it because he was too busy thinking ahead. That's something we've seen far too much. And at this point in his career, I mean, I think it's fair to ask for a little bit more. Kat, something that was a little interesting last week, the Dolphins chose to start Patrick Paul over Kendall Lamb against the Tennessee Titans. What were your thoughts on how he did and if Miami should continue that moving forward when you consider someone like Teron Armstead, I think, is back to fully practicing?
Yeah, I thought he did a decent job. I don't blame him for anything that happened. He fell off a couple of blocks from when I rewatched the game, but that's to be expected. Yeah, I mean, Kendall Lamb, I think, played well the week before. A little bit of a surprise Paul got in there, but with how I feel about the team right now, any younger player that can get in there and makes any sort of impact, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah, and if we're sitting here really doing this again and you're sitting here trying to, get a good idea of what Chris Greer has, right? You want to see these guys that he's drafted these last few years that we've just been waiting to see. I mean, Patrick Paul, I thought, played very well. We saw in the preseason Jaylen Wright kind of going behind him a lot. Maybe we see that this week, but I think there's a lot more issues than we have than what Patrick Paul's doing, at least based on that first game.
One of the biggest issues for the Miami Dolphins entering week 3 is the fact that Jaelan Phillips will not be playing this season. He suffered a partially torn ACL. I think that was Barry Jackson, Miami Herald, who reported that one. Guys, when we're just looking at a season that continues to get worse and worse, I mean, we saw what happened to Jaelan Phillips last year, that season-ending injury against the Jets. For him to come back, fight back, be ready for opening day, get taken out by friendly fire, try to go back on the field and just unable to do it, man. Just the Jaelan Phillips story has been such a heartbreaker.
And what is this? Going back to last year, twice in 12 games that two of our players have run into each other and taken a major part of our defense out for the year. And it's just what a shame. This guy is turning into a superstar last year, and tears his Achilles on the New York turf, and then this year runs into his own player and tears his knee up. I mean, it's a shame. This was truly my favorite Dolphin, and it's a shame that this is happening again. I guess if there's any somewhat positive, it's a partial tear, and we're in September, or he did it at the end of September. So hopefully he comes back next year, guns a-blazing, and he's fully healthy by the time he gets out in the field.
Yeah, you touched on it. He's one of our favorite players, if not our favorite player, and your heart breaks for him because he battled back. And, I think it was a contract year. He's coming up in a contract year, so who knows how that'll impact things. But I am intrigued to see what now happens, right? Because you lost Jaelan Phillips, a potential superstar. We mentioned we need to see more out of these draft picks. Is Chop Robinson going to finally step up to the plate? They need him now more than ever. So my heart breaks for Jaelan Phillips, but it sounds like he's ready to come. He's going to be battling back, and he's already making threats to anybody that's lining up across from him.
Just to get as dark as possible with this, Kat, do we ever see Jaelan Phillips and Bradley Chubb on the field together again in Miami Dolphins uniforms?
No, because I think well, I have to look at Chubb's contract situation, but I think we'll see how he does when he comes back in a few weeks. But after that, are the Dolphins going to be able to trade him off or cut some money off the books with him? I don't know, because next year Jalen Phillips is going to be in his 5th year. They picked up the 5th-year option on him, so I'm going back. I'm going back and forth on that. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I shook my head no. I kind of thought that wouldn't happen, but I'm glad you brought the 5th-year option because that's one of those little nuggets that just kind of slip your mind. So I guess he's still going to be battling back. They'll see next year if he can get that contract, but I don't think we'll see Chubb and Phillips on the field again, and that kind of hurts me a little bit.
That Titans game left a really bad taste in my mouth for someone like Chop Robinson. Kat, I don't know if you saw the same thing. It felt like there were different plays where the Titans offensive linemen were kind of pointing in his direction, like, hey, maybe let's run this way. He seems like he kind of struggled at times. And a big part of this picture is nobody expected Chop Robinson to come in, be more than a pass rush specialist, especially in year one. But considering the hand that was dealt, considering they didn't re-sign Andrew Van Ginkel, the Shaq Barrett situation, he decided to retire. I have a hard time seeing us feeling pretty good about Chop Robinson at any point this year.
I think he's been terrible, and I hate to say that because I liked the pick at the time. But it seems like on pass rush situations he's trying to win with power on the outside, and he's not going to do that. I hope they can design a few things to get him in space a little bit more. And yeah, against the run, he's been pathetic, and we kind of expected that, but not this bad. So, it's only 4 games into his career, and things can turn around. But man, when you look at this edge position, just everything dating back to the end of last year. Jalen Phillips, 2 season-ending injuries. Bradley Chubb, season-ending injury with 3 minutes left in a blowout game. Shaq Barrett, you sign, you get excited about. He leaves 9 days before training camp starts. Andrew Van Ginkel doesn't come back, and he goes to Minnesota, and he's absolutely tearing it up. I mean, and then Chop Robinson has been awful in his first 4 games. Everything the Dolphins have done here at the edge spot has gone wrong.
That was so painful for you to go through all that. And I think, Mike McDaniel kind of joked that's his favorite position. So to just see it, just absolutely backfire. And, I go back to that picture of, I think it's Anthony Weaver hugging Chop Robinson. I think he said, we're so glad you're here. And I just don't know that they seriously, had a plan in mind, right? You mentioned it. He's going out there. They're expecting him to stop the run. He's getting absolutely obliterated. We're not seeing the same type of speed off the edge. So I hope he steps up. But, Chop Robinson maybe not quite being what they expected this early on. Maybe why they brought in a familiar face like Tyus Bowser yesterday, right? They signed him off the Seattle Seahawks practice squad, has familiarity with the system. So a veteran guy, 29 years old. I know I had some, Bowser pictures from way back in the Twitter days. I was retweeting those back when the draft came around. So intrigued by this signing for sure. For, again, like you mentioned, a position that the Dolphins are just waiting and hoping someone steps up.
The Dolphins are averaging less than 2 sacks a game. Kat, you surprised there wasn't Melvin Ingram for the 18th time?
A little bit, yeah. Bowser's interesting. He's got, obviously, he and Weaver go back. I'm fine with the signing. I mean, he's the best you're going to find out there. Whether you sign Bowser, Justin Houston, Melvin Ingram, he's I remember back in the 2017 draft, he was really popularly mocked to the Dolphins there, and they ended up taking Raekwon McMillan there, and so he's carved out a decent career for himself. He's had a couple of 7 or 8 sack seasons, so hopefully he can come in and bring some veteran presence. My hopes are not entirely high based on him getting a little up there. He's in his 8th year, but he's as good as you're going to find out there.
And the Dolphins do have a pretty good matchup here when you consider this New England Patriots offensive line is very beat up. David Andrews, I think it was just announced that he will be missing the remainder of the season with a shoulder injury. I think the Patriots will be starting their 4th string left offensive tackle for the 2nd straight week. A lot of opportunities for the Dolphins to attack here. I think it's going to be the Calais Campbell and Zach Sealer show. But, Kat, I already see the situation unfolding. If you have guys like Sealer and Campbell pressuring up the middle, that's going to force quarterbacks, ones with a little bit of mobility, someone like Jacoby Brissett, to roll out of the pocket. Does Miami have enough on the edge there to not just get completely beaten on every single rollout? Because that's the nightmare scenario I see unfolding.
Yeah, that's a good question there because Sealer and Calais Campbell are 2 guys that you can't complain about here on the
Right.
Dolphins roster. They've been great so far, and that's the only position you can really point to, the 3-4 end positions. They've done a great job this year. But yeah, I mean this is a game where if you force Jacoby Brissett to the outside and get him to throw on the run, there could be some things over the middle that the Dolphins have been vulnerable to. But it's Jacoby Brissett. Come on, like if you lose a convincing game here against New England, I mean, you're the worst team in the league. I already think the Dolphins without Tua are the worst team in the league right now. But if you can't get something, if you can't stop them, hold them to 10 points, come out with a 16-13 or 13-10 win, I mean, I'll be looking forward to the bye week next week.
And that's what I'm sitting here. It just sounds like everything you're saying. It's going to be so Jacoby Brissett to just have this revenge game against us, and then it's just to be sitting here stewing on what the hell happened. I mean, I was going into last week's game thinking if they somehow lose to this game, I'm going to be, pretty much, at rock bottom. And now we're sitting here saying, okay, one more week, Jacoby Brissett. So I think the Dolphins, they have to find a way to win this one. But like you mentioned, Jake, if he gets to the outside, if you can't contain that edges, I mean, it could be a long day where that's the run game. And we saw Tony Pollard break off some big ones last week. And Jacoby Brissett, man, this dude's going to look like Michael Vick. And now I'm a little bit scared.
I think the key to this game, and weirdly enough, one of the things I think we've all joked about, Kat, Josh, you said it on yesterday's podcast, it was kind of like a kiss of death when Mason Rudolph came in for Will Levis, because you kind of like the wild card of Will Levis where Mason Rudolph is going to play a little smarter. He's going to keep the ball clean. Well, the Patriots lead back, Ramondre Stevenson, has some massive fumbling issues, and Miami has a lot of players who are really good at punching the ball out. However, timing is ideal for Miami because the Patriots, it does seem like they're going to start to go away from Stevenson and lean it into Antonio Gibson instead. He actually led the Patriots with 67 yards last week. Boys, how do we feel about Miami's ability to protect the middle of the field, especially with someone like Gibson, who I think it's either going to be a burst up the middle or he's going to be catching a ball trying to get away from a linebacker?
Yeah, from what I've seen so far this year, not good. And look, the defense in general hasn't been terrible. I mean, you've had some good performances. Calais Campbell, Zach Sealer. I think Cater Kohu's played better. Jordan Brooks, I think, has been a decent signing. But you look at how this defense was constructed. You put a lot of money into David Long Jr. and Jordan Brooks, off-ball linebackers. Is that really a way that you want to design your football team here in 2024? No, I think it was a terrible move to do those things. And just as bad as on the offensive side of the ball, you've got Tua behind an offensive line that's terrible on the interior of the line. I mean, it's a poorly constructed roster, and we should have seen a little bit more of that in the offseason. So to answer your question, I think they are vulnerable to Antonio Gibson over the middle.
Yeah, I mean, now you're just making us all think, right? Everyone that's listening to this, why didn't we see this? As you get older, you realize how important the trenches are. It's all we talk about, and they've just completely, said F all that. So how do I feel about it? Anthony Walker looked absolutely, he looked pretty bad last week. Everyone's saying maybe Shane Tyndall. I'm not even going to throw that out there because I've been calling that for a while. So other than Jordan Brooks, I mean, I would be a little bit worried about Antonio Gibson having one of those games where everyone's going to be like, he's going to have one of those fantasy games where he's being picked up in all your leagues, and it's just all you have to remember is he just gashed your favorite football team.
Cater Kohu's been targeted 17 times in coverage, has allowed 12 receptions for 130 yards. Jordan Brooks, opposing quarterbacks, have completed 13 of 16 targets for 127 yards. And David Long Jr., man, toast. 13 receptions on 14 targets for 140 yards and a touchdown. And then Javon Holland, 5 receptions on 8 targets. He had that 71-yard touchdown to DK Metcalf, where that one I think we can we can't just push it off the table, but we understand what kind of happened there, and you take the good and the bad in some of those scenarios. However, it does seem like on the outside, Miami's in a pretty good spot, Kat. Jalen Ramsey, I think he's lived up to expectations so far. We saw him, try to tackle a dude through another dude on the sideline recently. I think that was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. And it looks like Kendall Fuller is going to be back too. He's working through concussion protocol, practicing more and more every day.
And this is where the Dolphins have to dominate the matchup because, the Patriots have been terrible passing the football as well. And, you've got Kendall Fuller on the outside, come back from the concussion, like you said. It also allows Cater Kohu to cover the slot. And, I like what I've seen so far out of Storm Duck, too. I I don't blame the secondary for really anything that's going on. And as proof of that, I mean, look, against the Bills on primetime, they allowed 31 points. Josh Allen threw for 139 yards. Against the Titans, Mason Rudolph and Will Levis combined for 110 yards passing, and the Dolphins allowed 31 points. I mean, it's really hard to blame the secondary for any of this, but more specifically, players like Chop Robinson and Storm Duck and Cater Coder, the younger guys on the team, are players, as if things go from bad to worse here, or from worse to, can't think of a word. These are the guys that are going to be rooting harder for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I like this matchup, like you both mentioned. I think, like you said, Storm Duck has been playing very well. I don't like our safeties at all. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at them, and I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the Patriots love targeting their tight ends. Hunter Henry, I believe, is their leading, target, and that's a guy who, I mean, in the middle of the field, I'm sitting here talking about Anthony Walker. We're reading off stats about how bad Jordan Brooks has been. I mean, that could be a matchup where I could be a little bit queasy. So outside of that, I mean, Kendall Fuller was playing wonderful. Jalen Ramsey looks like the superstar he is. And like you guys both have said, Storm Duck stepped up. So my biggest fear is that tight end position, and maybe Hunter Henry just absolutely feasting in the middle on those check downs that I'm sure Jacoby Brissett will take all day long if he can.
And I think the Patriots just promoted Hunter Henry to like an offensive captain as well, which would be the corniest thing for the Dolphins to do, is give up 2 touchdowns. And then you see the social media graphic by the Pats, captain, my captain, something really stupid and corny. I already see that coming down the pipeline. Looking at this Miami Dolphins team in general, 20 pre-snap penalties, that's a league high, 42 total flags, 26 at home. I mean, that's just so insane. Obviously, this game's on the road. But Kat, who needs to step up and just kind of ignite something? Who do you want to see that really has been flying under the radar so far? Obviously, we've had some big Calais Campbell games. Javon Holland made some plays. But is there somebody who you want to see just really kicking and screaming, saying, I swear to God, we cannot lose to the New England Patriots. We can't be this bad?
Well, I hope the whole team's like that, but it's outside of that. I want to see Austin Jackson be a more consistent player. He's shown some really good flashes this year, and he's been awful at certain points this year. And he's somebody that is got under contract for a few more years, can play different positions, but it needs to be more consistent at this point in his career. So he's got to really emerge as a leader, with Teron Armstead in and out of the lineup here every week. And just going back to the penalties, and it's one of the most nauseating things about all of this. I mean, just you look at Mike McDaniel's first year with Miami, the Dolphins were 29th in penalties. Second year, 21st in penalties. This year, I believe they're 29th again in penalties. A lot of these are pre-snap, they're illegal shifts, they're things that should not be happening in year 3 under a supposed offensive genius. And I go back to, with Mike McDaniel, I don't think the team is afraid to make mistakes in front of him. And that's, to me, where I lose all faith in Mike McDaniel. I hope he proves me wrong, but I don't know what else to say now that you're spiraling out of control here in the middle of your third year.
And I mean, that's the doubt that we all have in our minds at this point, is that, is that rah-rah guy? Can he get these guys to step up and, hold themselves accountable? For me, the guy I really want to see step up, and maybe it's because I tweeted, late, was it like 2 weeks ago, late at night, but Javon Holland, I want to see him, prove to be that leader. We know Jordan Poyer, I'm joking, he's a Trojan horse at this point. He's not going to be playing this week. So I want to see Javon Holland step up, prove to be that leader, come down and help out in the run game, in coverage, do a little bit of everything that, heading into the year, a lot of us wanted to re-sign Javon Holland. I know I did. I know we talked about Jalen Phillips being one of our favorite players. I'm going to be honest, Javon Holland is as well. So I want to see him step up, take control of that defense, and let their, put a lasting imprint on this. I mean, if it wasn't for his forced fumble in week 1, we'd be 0-4 right now.
So the Dolphins are near the top of the league in penalties. Kat, you mentioned earlier in the show that the Dolphins are getting to the healthiest they've been in some time. So I'm just going to read off some names here. Julian Hill, 6 penalties through 4 games. Unnamed, they have 4 illegal shift penalties given just to the Dolphins offense. Liam Eichenberg has 3 false starts. Anthony Walker actually has 3 illegal formations. I think those are all on special teams. And then you have Robert Jones, who has 2 holding penalties. I'll be a little more lenient towards the in-play penalties. Like the pre-snap ones just seem so unacceptable. Who are some players that you can maybe slide into these positions if we continue to see Julian Hill or like a Liam Eichenberg struggle just to get a playoff?
Yeah, the tight end position has been a train wreck. I mean, penalties, dropped passes. Durham Smythe, I don't know what he's doing at this point. Julian Hill, 6 penalties. I think there were overall team penalties on a few of those Julian Hill penalties, but still, I mean, I think he's got potential, but that's about it. Yeah, it's maybe Tanner Conner gets a few more snaps this week if things don't pick up. And then defensively, I'm with Josh. Channing Tindall, if I don't see how he could be worse than what I saw with Anthony Walker last week.
Yeah, I'd love to see Channing Tindall step up. That's honestly, I've been calling for that for a while now. But I mean, for me, the tight end position, I mean, and this just makes me realize that, maybe I'm just such a blind homer because heading into this year, we're sitting here talking about which one of these guys should we cut? This unit looks great. We can't wait to see what Tanner Conner can do. Can't wait to see Jonnu Smith unlock this offense. And it's all just been an absolute it's been dismal. 11 points per game, like you guys mentioned. So I don't know who's going to step up. And you mentioned Liam Eichenberg, Jake. I mean, would that be Lester Cotton's time? I mean, I don't know who we have that's really going to make that offensive line much better at this point. But I don't know.
Shaq Barrett and Jonnu Smith are two signings that through 4 weeks, there's massive whiffs that are just every week impacting this organization. Jonnu Smith snaps by week, 28%, 42%, 38%, 42%. I know drive stall, and maybe he's not the best guy to have out there on a 12 or 2nd and 16, something like that, just the issues the Miami Dolphins have. But Julian Hill, 59% of snaps, 37, 41, and 50% of snaps. Through 4 weeks, I think the most depressing part is just the lack of direction. There's been a lack of development, a lack of sustained drives for this Miami Dolphins team in general. So, Kat, let me hear it. Let me get your idea. What are you predicting? How does this game conclude come Sunday?
Well, yeah, and just before the prediction, it's a shame the way this team was constructed. I remember when we were back in January and February, the one thing I wanted the Dolphins to do is do whatever you need to do to bring back Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, and then draft offensive linemen. Because if you can combine that with Hill and Waddle, then you really have something. Throw the defense overboard if you have to. And what did they do? They ignored the offensive line. Tua's hurt. The play got hurt on wasn't the offensive line's fault. They can't run the ball, even though they've got Devon Achane, who averaged 10 yards a carry last year. It's a bad situation. And no, I don't think the Dolphins can beat anybody right now. And not only do I think they're going to lose, I'm going to tell you how they're going to lose. The Dolphins are going to get up 10-3 in this game. And we're going to be in the fourth quarter.
First lead?
Yes, first lead. And then Drake May's going to come in the game. He's going to score. He's going to throw 2 touchdowns. Patriots are going to win 17-10. And we're going to leave that game 1-4 and thinking, oh, the Patriots have their franchise quarterback. That's how it's going to happen. And that's how the season's gone. And I bet we come back next week and you say, Kat, things were even worse than you predicted. That's how the season has gone. I hate to be salty right now, but I'm trying to find anything good with what's going on. So no expectations this weekend.
I even just before Josh, I just want to looking at that Titans game last week and how that Titans game ended, and then looking at the PFF grades after, it's such a swift kick in the nuts, to use your words, Kat. JC Latham was absolutely incredible. What the Titans do, draft him in the first round. And then Tavondre Sweat absolutely was just a dominating force from start to finish against the Miami Dolphins. You had Jeffrey Simmons there Thursday before the game saying, man, I really like our chances here. I love our chances going up against an interior that includes Aaron Brewer. It's just such a killer that you see these teams do it right. And yes, I love the Patrick Paul signing. And I think Chop can still be a good player, but just the scenario he's in now, and it's just not going to go well when he needs time to develop. And it's just brutal. It's just brutal to see that scenario play out where you have the Titans, a team that you tweet about them twice, and all of a sudden your For You page on Twitter is all Titans, and they were feeling a lot worse than Dolphin fans somehow. A lot of the tweets I were reading, for them to come out and just look like a team that's progressing and moving in the right direction, while the Dolphins, who are supposed to be in year 3, continue just to sputter in the same circle. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Sorry, Josh.
No, and I mean, I don't even know how I'm going to come on here. I already predicted a 17-14 game yesterday, so I have to stick to that because I'm already on record with that. But you guys are both sitting here just making me realize, just how down and out we are. I mean, you guys saw me tweeting about how Tua hasn't looked at very well over his last 10 starts, and everyone's all over me about that. I mean, I'm already talking myself into how things are not even going to get better this year. So I hope we're all wrong. I hope we're sitting here with egg on our face and everyone's clipping these things and we're, winning a playoff game for the first time in 25 years. But I just don't know how you can look at this team with what we see without our star quarterback. I mean, we knew we were going to take the step back, but this team just looks like they do not care. They should just hit the sim button until he comes back. And even then, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm saying all that in 17-14 Dolphins over the Patriots.
You beat the Patriots, and then who knows, maybe Joe Flacco's starting for the Colts, and then all of a sudden you're 3-3. That's like the one thing too. I don't want to get too crazy because the season is so long, and like I've heard my entire life, it's that Bill Belichick always said the season doesn't start till Thanksgiving, and I'm not going to sit here and compare the Dolphins to like a 6-time Super Bowl winning organization, but there is that still that part deep inside of me that's holding out hope that it's still so early. Obviously, I don't want this team to go 1-7 like they did with Brian Flores, but God, if they can shock us this badly by being 1-3 after 4 games, would it shock you that? No, it'd be super shocking if they beat the Bills. And guess what? Von Miller was just suspended, and he gets to come back. It's when they play the Dolphins. God, I tried to get us there, but I couldn't find us anything good. Kat, I like it. 17-10 Patriots. Please, Dolphins, prove us wrong. That is it. That is all the time we have today on Another Dolphins Podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. We will be back, Josh, I think Sunday night with an instant reaction to the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. We're hoping, praying for a win. Everyone go enjoy your weekend, and most importantly, fins up.
Fins up.
Fins up.